Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Unbound Off Script. I'm Beth Curry. So as I like to say, every single off-script episode at the start of the show, stay curious, stay questioning. Actually, I've never said that, not once, but probably a few of you just kind of nodded along like, oh yeah, there's the catchphrase. You know, that kind of weird sensation where your brain accepts a fact that was never really true is exactly where we're headed today. Talking about the Mandela Effect. This episode was a request. As I've said previously in other episodes, and this is real, I have said this, not a Mandela Effect, this one, I've said if anybody out there has anything that they want to hear me talk about, you know, I love a good topic. I love to research things, interesting things, dig really deep, and then apparently and evidently I like to talk. So I will then talk about it. So if you have any ideas that you want me to ramble on about, for no good reason other than you're just bored and you want to hear someone else talk about things you're thinking about, let me know. Contact info is in the show notes. This particular idea, though, came from one of my biggest supporters, and I would love to have suggestions from other people sometimes too. Okay? This episode might make you question either your sanity or the fundamental nature of reality. Maybe both, probably both. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh, it's Beth doing her conspiracy theory nonsense again, just hear me out, okay? Because whether you believe in parallel universes, simulation theory, or just an overall mass delusion, which seems to be a pretty recurring theme right now in the world, the Mandela Effect is fascinating. You can't really deny that. And it's hilarious a little bit and deeply unsettling. So here's the setup. Millions of people remember things one way. Reality says they're wrong. But it's not just random mistakes. It's specific, detailed, shared, false memories. We're all wrong in the exact same way. So either we're all experiencing the same memory glitches, or reality itself is being edited and we're just catching the changes, right? Or someone's completely fucking with us by labeling all of this Mandela Effect and watching us lose our minds trying to figure it out. So I want to explore every possibility because I promise you by the end of this episode, at least 3 things that you were 100% certain about are going to turn out to be wrong. So the term Mandela Effect comes from Fiona Broome. She's a paranormal researcher who I think it was 2009, I didn't write that part down, discovered she wasn't alone in remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Not just dying, she remembered news coverage and funeral footage and riots and his widow's speech, detailed specific memories of an event that never happened. Because the thing is, Nelson Mandela didn't die in the 80s. He was released from prison in 1990. And he became the president of South Africa, and he died in 2013. And this is documented, verified, and impossible to dispute. But the weird thing is, Fiona wasn't the only one with this memory. At a conference, she mentioned it and discovered probably dozens of other people remembered the exact same thing. Same details, same conviction, and same completely false memory. How? How do multiple people independently remember the same event that never occurred? That's the Mandela Effect. And once you start looking for examples, you realize they're everywhere. And at least a few of them are going to make you go, wait, what? So I'm going to go through the greatest hits of collective reality confusion just to set things up here. I'm going to start with the one that kind of breaks everyone except for me because I grew up on the right side of this one. A children's book. Berenstain Bears. So was it Berenstein Bears or Berenstain Bears? If you said Berenstein with an EIN, congratulations. If you said Berenstein with an EIN, congratulations. In both cases, you're wrong and you're not alone. It's Berenstain. It has always been Berenstain, AIN, like stain. I grew up knowing this. This was the pronunciation that I used to get made fun of for saying, despite the fact that I always saw it this way. But millions of people remember Berenstein or Berenstein. They have these visceral memories of reading these books as children. They remember sounding it out, Berenstein. Some people claim they have old books at their parents' house with the Berenstein spelling, and they're going to prove everyone wrong, but they never do because it's always been Berenstain. So I dare you to call your siblings right now and ask them how to spell it, because they'll say Berenstein or Berenstein, and then you'll tell them they're wrong, and they'll get mad at you, and they'll Google it, and they'll have an existential crisis. You're welcome for that. Luke, I am your father. This is the line everyone quotes from The Empire Strikes Back. It's iconic. It's been parodied a million times. It's seared into pop culture. One of my favorite movies, ridiculous, is Tommy Boy with Chris Farley. And I remember him speaking into a fan and saying that, except now that I'm saying that, I think he said, Luke, I am your father. But now that I'm saying that, I'm wondering if he actually said the actual line, which is, no, I am your father. So now I feel like I have to watch that. But if you watch this scene right now, he doesn't say Luke's name. He says, no, I am your father, in response to Luke saying, you killed my father. That's Darth Vader I'm talking about, not Chris Farley. But we all quote it as, Luke, I am your father. All of us, like for decades. Parodies, memes, Halloween costumes, everywhere. Into fans, whatever. We've been collectively misquoting one of the most famous movie lines of all time. So like how? How does everyone get it wrong in the exact same way? Another one, mirror, mirror on the wall. What does the evil queen say in Snow White? Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? You're wrong again, because she says magic mirror on the wall. Magic mirror, not mirror, mirror. Check the original Disney movie. Check every version. It's always been magic mirror. But everyone says mirror, mirror. I did when I was a kid. I thought that's what it was. It's in every reference, every retelling of the story. We all learned it wrong, or reality changed, and we're the only ones who remembered the original. I don't know. Now, another one that I remember vividly, Curious George. You know, that cute little monkey. I loved him when I was little. Do you see a tail when you close your eyes and picture him? A lot of people do. They have vivid memories of Curious George swinging from his tail, using his tail to grab things, the tail being central to various plot points. He's never had a tail, not once, not in any book, not in any episode, any adaptation. He is a tailless monkey. He always has been. But people will fight you on this. They know he had a tail. They can picture it. They can remember specific scenes where the tail was important, but those scenes don't exist. They never did, because he did not have a tail. Rich Uncle Pennybags, the Monopoly Man. Top hat, mustache, fancy suit. Does he have a monocle? If you said yes, you're wrong. He's never had a monocle, not in any version of the game ever, in any country at any time. But so many people can picture it clearly. They remember the monocle. They remember which eye it was on. They remember thinking he looked distinguished with his top hat and monocle combo. Never happened. It never existed. You're probably thinking of Mr. Peanut, who does have a monocle, but that's not who people are remembering. They're specifically remembering the Monopoly Man with a monocle, and reality says, no, you're wrong. Now, what does Forrest Gump say? Life is like a box of chocolates. Nope. He says life was like a box of chocolates. Was, past tense, talking about what his mama used to say, but everyone quotes it in present tense. Every inspirational poster, every grad speech, every reference. Life is like a box of chocolates. Watch the movie. It's always been was. And in The Silence of the Lambs, when Hannibal Lecter first meets Clarice, he says, hello, Clarice, in that creepy, unforgettable way, right? No, he says, good morning. He never says, hello, Clarice, at any point in the movie, not once, but it's been parodied so many times that we all think he does. Like, we can actually hear Anthony Hopkins saying it, but he didn't. Not in that movie anyway. Remember Jiffy peanut butter, the jar with the simple label? Maybe your mom bought it. No, it doesn't exist. There's Jif peanut butter. There's Skippy peanut butter. There has never in the history of peanut butter been a Jiffy brand, but people remember it. They remember the jar and the taste and having it in their pantry. I'm Canadian, so we never saw that. We always only had like Kraft, whatever that was. There's just Kraft. But that's the company. Oh my gosh, I'm going crazy now trying to remember things, but whatever. People remember it. They remember it all. They remember preferring it over Jif or Skippy because Jif was real. Skippy was real, but Jiffy wasn't. It never existed. Another one, look at the Fruit of the Loom logo. You know, the underwear brand, right? It's just fruit, right? Apples, grapes, some leaves. But do you remember a cornucopia? That horn-shaped wicker basket with fruit spilling out of it? Because a huge number of people do. They have detailed memories of it. Some people learned what a cornucopia was specifically because of that logo. They remember being a kid and asking their parents, what's that basket thing? And being told that's a cornucopia. The logo has never had a cornucopia. Never, not in any decade, any country, any version. Just fruit, no basket, no cornucopia. But people are so convinced it was there that they've gone through decades of old ads, clothing tags, everything. It's never there. It never was. And now I think, as I'm saying this, that I learned what a cornucopia was from probably just some coloring sheet that we did in grade 1 or whatever at Thanksgiving. But not because of Fruit of the Loom. Sing the end of Queen's We Are the Champions. How does it end? Most people sing Of the World at the end, right? Listen to the album version. It ends on We Are the Champions with no Of the World at the end. That phrase appears earlier in the song, but not at the very end. And thousands of people have sung it wrong their entire lives. And it feels wrong when you hear it without that ending. It feels incomplete. Another movie. This one's kind of wild to me. Thousands of people remember a movie from the 90s called Shazam, starring comedian Sinbad as a genie. They don't just vaguely remember it, they remember the plot. 2 kids find a genie, hijinks ensue. But I guess that's the plot of any movie with the genie. They remember the terrible 90s special effects. They remember the VHS box art, Sinbad in genie clothes with his arms crossed. They remember watching it multiple times. Some people remember owning it. But the movie does not exist. It's never existed. Sinbad has repeatedly, publicly stated he never made a genie movie. There's no production record, no cast list, no reviews, no footage, no IMDb description, nothing. But what about Kazam, you ask? Yes, there was a Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal as a genie. That existed. But people aren't misremembering Kazam. They remember both movies. They remember Sinbad's being the better one. They remember comparing the two. So how do thousands of people have detailed specific memories of a movie that was never, ever made? Quick, what color is C-3PO? He's gold, right? He's the gold robot. He is, except for his lower right leg, which has always been silver. Check any movie, check any promotional image. His right leg from the knee down has always been silver or gray. Always. But most people remember him as solid gold. They're shocked when they see the silver leg. When did that happen? When did they change that? They didn't. It's always been there. How many E's are in Febreze? You know, the air freshener? If you said 3, you're wrong. It's 2. 1 E in the middle, 1 at the end. It's not F-E-B R-E-E-Z-E. It's F-E-B-R-E-Z-E. But it feels like it should be B-R-E-E-Z-E with 3 E's like a breeze. That would make sense, but it's not. It's never been. How about the chocolate bar? Kit Kat. Hi, Nate. I know it's your favorite. Is there a hyphen? Nope. No hyphen. It's just Kit Kat. 2 capital K's, no hyphen, and no space. But look at how many people write it as Kit Kat with the dash. The hyphen. It feels wrong without the hyphen, I think. And then what about the show Looney Tunes? T-U-N-E-S. Like musical tunes. Always has been. But a huge number of people remember it as Looney Tunes, T-O-O-N-S, like cartoons, which would make a hell of a lot more sense, right? They're cartoons. Why would it be tunes, T-U-N-E-S? But it is. It always has been. What color is chartreuse? This is another one that hasn't stumped me because I know, I've had a newborn baby. I know this color well. Most people say it's a reddish color, a deep red, magenta, or burgundy, but it's yellow-green. It's always been yellow-green. That's the definition of chartreuse. But people are convinced it's red. They remember learning it as red. They remember describing things as chartreuse, meaning red. You know, they're thinking of vermilion or carmine or burgundy or something, but somehow collectively, everyone decided chartreuse was red. What about Sarah Jessica Parker show? the HBO show. How's it spelled? It's Sex and the City. Always has been. But an enormous number of people remember it as Sex in the City. And they're shocked when you tell them it's and. They will argue with you. They will fight you because people will fight you over anything, especially on the internet. They'll pull up their HBO account to prove you wrong, and then they'll see Sex in the City and their brain will break a little bit. Oscar Mayer, the bologna, the hot dogs. How do you spell the last name? It's Oscar Mayer, Mayer. But the jingle goes, my bologna has a first name. It's OSCA. I'm not singing it. I'm not putting you guys through that again. I've sung way too much on this podcast. And as I've admitted, I cannot sing anymore, so I'm just not doing it. Anyway, back to this. Meyer in the song. The jingle spells it Meyer, but the packaging says Mayer, and your brain just glitched, didn't it? Actually, the jingle does spell it Mayer correctly, but everyone remembers it as Meyer because our brains autocorrect it to the more common spelling. Now let's talk some artsy-fartsy things. Is Mona Lisa smiling? If you said yes, you're actually right, but a lot of people remember her as more neutral or stern-looking. Now when they see the painting, her smile seems more obvious, more pronounced than what they remember, right? People swear the painting has changed, that her expression is different than it used to be, or maybe we just never looked at it that carefully, and our memory filled in a more neutral expression than what's actually there. And sticking with this old-ass art, Rodin's The Thinker. Where's his hand? Now, I always knew where his hand was. Most people picture his fist pressed into his forehead because isn't that how we all spend most of reality? But looking at the actual statue, his hand is under his chin and not on his forehead. It's always been under his chin, but people remember the forehead placement. They're sure of it. Some have even mimicked the pose wrong their entire lives, and they look like idiots. All right, so we've established that a lot of people remember things wrong in very specific and very consistent ways, right? So let's talk about why. These are theories and not conspiracy theories. Here goes Beth again with her conspiracy. Nope, this is just theories, okay? Theory number 1, your brain is a lying liar that lies. This is the boring scientific explanation because human memory is absolute trash, okay? Every time you remember something, you're not playing back a recording at all. You're reconstructing the memory from fragments, and every reconstruction introduces errors, of course, right? It's kind of like the telephone game, but different. Your brain fills in gaps with what makes sense, and it merges similar memories, right? It kind of confabulates without you realizing it. So Berenstain versus Berenstain. Your brain autocorrects to the more common Stein ending because it's a pattern you know. And the Monopoly Man's monocle, you're merging him with Mr. Peanut, who has a monocle. Both are wealthy mascots. So your brain combines them. And Sinbad's Genie movie, you're conflating Kazam with the fact that Sinbad was everywhere in the 90s doing family-friendly comedy and probably wore a genie costume for something. This explanation works for most examples, right? It's well documented that memory is unreliable, that false memories can be implanted, and we're all kind of walking around with confidence in things that never ever happened. But what bugs me about this explanation, why are we all wrong in the same way? If memory is just individually unreliable, you'd expect random variations, right? Some people would remember Stein and some would remember Berenstain with an A. Whatever, like I can see this is a bad example because I'm a Berenstain person and everyone else isn't. So shitty example. But anyway, most people remember the EIN version and not the AIN version. And we all remember, Luke, I am your father, not, hey, Luke, I'm your dad. Or, Luke, guess what? I'm your father. Or Maury telling Luke that, he's not the father. He is whatever. That's specific phrasing. Anyway, the consistency is weird, and the false memory explanation doesn't quite account for why these specific false memories are so damn universal. Okay, so theory 2, confabulation and social reinforcement. So maybe the consistency comes from social reinforcement, right? One person misremembers and they tell others and it gets repeated in parodies and references or whatever. And eventually the false version becomes more culturally embedded than the real one, right? Luke, I am your father works for this. It's been quoted wrong so many damn times in pop culture that the false version becomes the canon in our collective consciousness, right? Mirror, mirror on the wall, too. Lots of retellings and parodies that use that phrasing. So we learned it wrong from secondary sources. This makes sense for movie quotes and song lyrics, right? The false versions get repeated more than the originals, so we kind of learn them wrong. But this doesn't explain the visual shit, right? Like the Monopoly Man's monocle and the Curious George tail and the Fruit of the Loom logo and C-3PO's silver leg. Like nobody's reinforcing these false memories through parody. They aren't putting out these widespread memes about the Monopoly Man's monocle, right? Or the tailless monkey. He's been consistently depicted in all media for decades. So it's weird that we would remember these things wrong anyway, like collectively in the same specific way. Here's where I'm going to start to go sideways with you. It's more up my alley. This is theory 3. We're merging timelines. This is a fun one. Okay, so what if the Mandela effect is evidence that we are experiencing these reality shifts, timeline merges, parallel universe bleed through. So the idea is this: there are multiple parallel universes existing simultaneously. In some of them, it was Berenstein or Berenstein. The Monopoly Man did have a monocle. Nelson Mandela did die in prison in the 80s. And somehow through CERN, quantum shifts, the universe correcting itself, whatever, these timelines are merging or we're jumping between them. Most of us kind of shift together, but we retain memories from the previous timeline. So you remember Berenstain Bears because in your timeline it was, and you shifted to this timeline. It's like your memory didn't update, right? So it's just these weird, stupid times shifts. Whatever, is this scientifically supportable? Absolutely not. Is it fun to think about? I think so. I love questioning things, and I do believe in questioning science too. So like even when something isn't scientifically supportable, that doesn't make it not true. It just needs a little more looking into. The parallel universe theory would explain the consistency, I think. We're all remembering the same thing because we all came from the same original timeline. We all jumped together. We all retained the same memories from before the shift. Maybe I'm crazy. It would also explain why these memories feel so real and so certain, right? Because they are real. They're just real from a timeline that no longer exists. And theory number 4 is another kind of wild and crazy one, the simulation theory, right? We all saw The Matrix? I don't know. What if we're living in a simulation and someone's just editing the code? Like someone realized they spelled Berenstein or Berenstein wrong back in the 60s and decided to fix it. They did a find and replace. They changed every instance to Berenstain, and they updated every image and every book and every file, but they couldn't update our memories, right? So now there's a mismatch between what we remember and what reality shows us. This would explain everything: the consistency, the certainty, the fact that no evidence exists of the versions we remember because they were deleted. They were retconned, edited out of the simulation. And maybe the reason these keep happening, the reason we keep noticing them, is because the editing is getting sloppier. Perhaps AI is taking over, or the editing is more frequent, or we're becoming more aware. Is this provable? No. Is it terrifying to consider? Absolutely. Well, to some people anyway. Does it make you want to check if other things have been changed? You betcha. This also works for me because I have a tendency to be extremely cynical about everything and everyone. Theory number 5, we're being screwed with. So here's a thought. What if the Mandela effect as a label is itself part of the problem? Fiona Broome gave this phenomenon a catchy name. It spread online, and suddenly people started looking for examples and finding them and sharing them and creating more false memories through the process of discussing false memories. It's possible that by creating this framework and an entire community around these memory errors, we've actually amplified them. Make sense? We made it easier for people to find false memories they didn't even know they had. So if someone posts, "Did the Monopoly Man have a monocle?" And suddenly, thousands of people think, "Wait, did he? I think maybe he did." And then that becomes a shared false memory that didn't exist before someone suggested it. Are we being gaslit by the very concept of the Mandela effect? Is the label itself creating more instances of the phenomenon? That's sneaky. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past the internet or whoever. So what's real, right? Here's the thing. I don't know which explanation is correct, and neither does anyone else. The scientific explanation, we all have unreliable memories that fail in similar ways, is probably right. It's the most parsimonious, Occam's razor, right? It doesn't require universe hopping or simulation editing, but it's also the most boring, and it doesn't quite explain the eerie consistency of these false memories either. The parallel universe theory is fun, but unfalsifiable. You can't prove it. You can't disprove it. It's just a neat story we tell ourselves to make sense of our cognitive dissonance. And then the simulation theory, it's philosophically interesting, but practically useless. If we're in a simulation being edited, what can we even do about it? And the we're being effed with theory, it's cynical, but not entirely wrong. The internet absolutely amplifies and creates false memories through suggestion and reinforcement, right? Maybe it's all of them. Maybe our memories are unreliable and we're being socially influenced, and there's something weird going on with reality that we don't have the framework to understand yet. I don't know. I think this is what the Mandela, if I could even speak, what the Mandela effect really reveals. I think, regardless of which explanation you believe, is that we can't trust our memories at all. Things you're 100% certain about, things you would bet your life on, things you remember correctly, you might be wrong about all of them. And not just you, everyone. We're all walking around with this unshakable confidence in memories that might be completely false. That's humbling, I think, and probably a little scary. And it should make all of us a little more skeptical of our own certainty, for sure. How many arguments have you had where you were absolutely certain you were right about something, only to discover later that you weren't? How many times have you been certain about a fact, a date, an event, whatever, only to be proven wrong, right? The Mandela Effect is just the collective documented version of that. It's all of us being wrong together and wondering how in the hell that's possible. Maybe the conspiracy theorists are right and reality is shifting. Maybe the scientists are right and we're all just bad at remembering things. Maybe we're in a simulation. Maybe we're being manipulated. Maybe we were never as certain about reality as we thought we were. I don't know. Is the Mandela Effect real? It depends on what you mean by real. Are these collective false memories happening? Yes. Objectively, verifiably, yes. Is there a supernatural or reality-binding explanation for it? Probably not, but it's fun to consider, in my opinion. It's my thing. It's my jam, baby. Is the phenomenon being amplified and manipulated by the internet and the label itself? Oh, absolutely it is. 100% without question. Should you go check your childhood belongings to see if it says Berenstein, or Berenstain? I mean, you're going to do it anyway. I know you are. We all do it. You're Googling right now. No, you probably Googled when I was talking about it. I don't know. Don't be surprised when you don't find the evidence you're looking for, because either reality has been edited or you never heard the memory quite right to begin with. And honestly, I'm not sure which option is more unsettling at all. I don't know. What I do know is I need to wrap this up. So thank you for being here and listening to this episode of Off Script. Please make sure to follow me wherever you listen to me, so when new episodes come out, you will be notified. Rate and review if you feel like it anywhere. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, IMDb, whatever. All episodes of Unbound are free. If you want to support the production costs or keep me from running ads and interruptions, you can find me on Ko-fi, but there's never any obligation. This content will always be free. Support and contact info is in the show notes. And if you join the Facebook group, we sometimes have further conversation over there. I will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit authorbethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.